After a short break, Talking Tech has returned, and on our relaunch episode, I'm joined by Rosie-May Parker, one of our team leads, and Nick Caley, our sales director. Hopefully going to give you a little snapshot into what to expect for sort of next episodes, and also to discuss kind of what's been happening in the market over the last 9 to 12 months since our last one. So I'll get the ball rolling by asking either one of you, but how's the market been since our last episode of Talking Tech?
I think there's been a massive shift. Obviously, we had the post-COVID hiring boom. The market was all a bit crazy. I've definitely noticed on the candidate side, it's slowed down slightly. There's more candidates, less jobs, and processes are slightly slower, I'd say.
Yeah, I think gone are the days of candidates disappearing in less than a week, securing 20, 30, 40% pay rises. I think there's been a little bit of realism more recently with clients having a bit more of a pick, should we say, with regards to who they decide to hire. I think we've seen some challenges with regards to, I think Rosie mentioned, kind of speed of process in one or two instances where clients perhaps are feeling like they can take a little longer than maybe they should to make the right decision on hiring someone. And I think that's something which has played out certainly over the last 3 to 6 months, definitely. But having said that, I feel more recently, probably last 4 to 6 weeks, I think things are starting to pick up. Probably not to those heady days that we saw post-COVID, but certainly to a much more active market where good people are definitely in demand, and good companies need to make sure that they have kind of robust hiring strategies in place to help them find the right people.
So, I mean, with that in mind, if you were giving a candidate advice at the moment about job market, looking for a role, what would you give them as advice at the moment?
I guess the standard advice of being, having a real in-depth technical focus CV. Things to be mindful about at the moment are like the work from home. That's slightly changing. So we're actually seeing a lot more clients want people in the offices more as opposed to 100% remote. So have a bit of think and preparation around that. I'd also say the classics of having your links, GitHub, Stack Overflows, all of those up to date with relevant work you're working on. And also clear out your diary or schedule slightly, because people are coming to the market, but they're being super busy, and we need just a little bit more flex on availabilities for interviews to keep the processes obviously ticking over at a nice speed.
Just a general question. You mentioned there, Rosie, about the working from home. I know it's something that we've all spoken about in terms of getting people back in the office, trying to get them, getting back that culture and that sort of team ethic and working together. It's a general one, but I mean, do you think that's going to become an issue? Do we think we're going to expect people in the office more generally? Is there going to be a bigger push for that, do you think?
Yeah, I've started noticing it. Most of my clients, we've had a lot of our big clients that have actually made that change. They're now 3 days in the office. A few people obviously were unhappy about that, but it's becoming a bit more of a regular thing. And I also think a lot more people are wanting to get a little bit more in the office. Maybe not as strict as 3 days a week, but maybe even if it's like once a month or every other week, people want to have a bit of like face-to-face time and stuff. So I think it might get a little bit of pushback, but otherwise on the whole, a few people are interested in it as well. But then there's still 100% remote jobs, but they're just a little bit less, I'd say.
I think with how businesses manage the return to the office, I think that's something which is really important. I think we have quite a wide plethora of clients, in terms of sectors and spaces, and I think there are instances where there's an announcement, for want of a better word, we're back in the office 3 days a week, get on with it, which I think generally is not particularly well received, as you mentioned, Rosie. But I think in instances where companies are actually proactively thinking about what is going to work for different teams, different departments, making sure that they're bringing groups together. So there is that collaboration and that kind of reinforcement of the business's culture. That's actually been quite popular because, as you say, I think I certainly think probably gone are the days where people are going to be in the office full time 5 days a week. But equally, I think in terms of technology businesses, and you see this a lot. I think if you read anything in the news about certainly some of the bigger tech businesses, I think a lot of their management seem very confident that collaboration and face-to-face collaboration makes a big difference, especially in things like research and development. When some of these companies are trying to solve very challenging problems, doing that remotely, I think is quite tough.
Yeah, I think what will be interesting will be how businesses manage their different departments, because I think, as we all know, that generally sales teams or a lot of client-facing teams, being in the office is a good thing. Collaborating with your colleagues and forming that kind of bond and that culture. I think the bit that will be interesting will be how they manage that from a technical perspective, because as we've all seen, technologists have worked really well at home. They've been really productive. They don't necessarily need the interaction from a point of building client relationships or team relationships. They can get on and code, which I think it'll be interesting. And I think a challenge for us in terms of a recruitment company will be how we advise or manage our clients. And I mean, on that, Kels, which I know you're dealing a lot with at the moment, what would you give as advice for our clients who are looking to restart their hiring or restart their recruitment process at the moment?
Yeah. I think kind of as Rosie mentioned once or twice, I think being well prepared is very important. And I know that sounds obvious, but actually having really figured out what they can afford and what's budgeted for, what holes really need filling, I think is important, especially now where, let's face it, the economy and therefore hiring managers' budgets are a little tighter than they probably were, 6 to 12 months ago. Then I think from there, having a robust interview process very much focused on skills, not necessarily where someone has worked or, what companies perhaps they've worked for, but much more focused on what someone can actually achieve. I think that's actually, a very important, sometimes slightly underutilized or under considered part of an interview process. And then I think just be reasonable and be quick. In simple terms, while the market isn't what it was previously, as I said, we're still definitely seeing good, say, software engineers managing 4, 5, 6 processes at one time and getting 2, 3 offers. And so being able to quickly and efficiently make a good decision on someone they want to hire, I think is still very important. And I think we've definitely seen businesses do that successfully. And then maybe the other bit I'd probably mention, kind of touching on the flexibility and the work from home. And as you said, Nick, I think some of this is probably still slightly up for debate, but just being proactive and honest with people about what their plans are. I think we've seen 1 or 2 instances where a business who were fully remote, for a period of time have started to make some changes, and actually they've got multiple new hires during that period of time, and they joined under the premise that scenario A was going to happen, and actually now we're in scenario B or potentially scenario C, and they're not quite so comfortable. So I just think being honest with staff about what's important to them, why that balance of flexible working is important, and making sure that everyone everyone knows what they're kind of getting into, because I think that's another thing which sometimes businesses don't really consider. And then actually they've got a decent number of relatively new staff who joined under a certain premise, and that premise has potentially changed. So I think that's something else that they need to be proactive about.
And I'm going to throw this out there, and I fear I'm going to be controversial with it, especially because you mentioned about salaries. I know one of the biggest things that we saw last year was huge increase in salaries like we've never seen before. What's the feeling so far? Are candidates going to have to take hits on salaries, or businesses still going to pay as much? What's the general feeling in terms of the salary?
I think in terms of clients, certainly, I think there's a little cooling down, shall we say, with regards to what they think is needed currently. I was talking to a CTO the other week, and they were kind of saying, actually, we focus more so on looking after our own staff during that crazy period, because what we appreciated was we have good people, we've taken a long time to train them and nurture them, and we don't want to lose them just because of a crazy 6 to 12 months. And I think actually that's something a lot of businesses have not considered, to be honest, and they're now in a quite challenging position where they've hired a number of staff at a bit of an inflated rate, as you mentioned. So I think I think people are still well paid and looked after, and still definitely able to secure increases as they move, but I think at a much more traditional 10-15% type rates and type increase. And I think we've seen a little bit, and as you mentioned, Nick, I think it's something you kind of hopefully can advise on as a business like us, is clients being realistic about what they can afford and being realistic about what the market is doing, because while it's not what it was, it doesn't mean you're going to be able to secure a combination of skills that you can't afford. And I think that's something we've seen a little bit, or sometimes comes up in interview processes when we're working with clients to help them, to hopefully help them get to the point where they hire the right person.
So it's definitely something candidates are thinking about as well at the moment in terms of when they're moving, and they've noticed a slight shift in terms. I've spoken to a couple of candidates that are looking on the job market and on job boards. They're seeing that what may have last year been advertised as some kind of crazy salary have been sort of slowing down slightly, and they notice it internally with, like, you know, different promotions and stuff or pay rises that they're getting. So I think it's just cooling off a little bit, that both sides are understanding it and getting on board with it.
Well, yeah, I know it was a source of frustration for all of our consultants and clients alike. You know, you'd have candidates that were in high demand and salaries that were very hard to manage, and it became a costly exercise, not only for us but for businesses who go through that process and then ultimately are left without the candidate they want. So with that kind of in mind, what's your view? And I'm conscious that this is only meant to be a snapshot relaunch episode, so we'll keep it fairly brief, but what do you think the future of the recruitment market looks like for the rest of this year, for both candidates, clients, and ourselves?
I think positive. I think positive. We need to say that, right? I think realistically, and we've even seen this probably in the last 4 to 6 weeks, is organisations that we've worked with for a long time that actually have been quite quiet for the last 6 months are starting to realise that, you know, they are in a competitive world themselves. You know, they're building software products with a lot of a lot of competition. If they don't do a good job, I think they're starting to appreciate that they need to grow, particularly their technology and engineering teams, to keep pace with the competition. So I think I definitely see a bit of an uptick in terms of opportunities and roles, and I think that's across most sectors. But I think things like health technology, life sciences, AI, you know, I think there are security there. There are definitely some areas which I think will grow faster than others. And I think what will be interesting actually is how potentially the market manages salaries this time round, because I think there are a lot of businesses who have seen what happened, you know, and obviously that's from Meta and Amazon and whoever else, you know, making lots of people redundant through to more traditional software companies. I think it'll be interesting to see how they handle hiring when the market is much busier, particularly when it comes to things like salaries and opportunities. So yeah, I suppose I'm kind of interested from Rosie's perspective how she thinks candidates might handle that, because if they do have lots and lots on the go, I suppose there's a potential desire to push it when it comes to salaries, but equally they've obviously seen what's happened at the moment. So yeah, I'm kind of interested to see where that goes.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the market, like you said, the last sort of 4 to 8 weeks, we've really been seeing companies come back, start hiring, whether it's sort of a lot of them took it internal and now they're kind of starting to be released in you know, out to recruiters and stuff. So it's definitely getting busier. I think candidates are going to have to start managing their time with it, because, you know, kind of during that COVID boom, people were having 6, 7 interviews that they were having to manage, prioritize, ranking them as to how interested they are in them, and actually not just say yes to every interview. So I think we're going to have to start managing that slightly again, but I think it's just very competitive at the moment because there are less jobs, and I think it will just start evening out that kind of split between roles and candidates.
I completely agree, and I think as Caley said, I think that it's in our nature to be positive, so I think we need to be, but I do think that it is, you starting to see a little bit of that, and whether it's hiring for us or for our clients, I feel like there's a little bit more of a positive attitude towards, you know, people looking for jobs and process, and, you know, the city itself is feeling a bit busier. So I'm hopeful as well. So hopefully we can see the benefits of that as this year pans out. I just wanted to say thank you very much for you guys joining us on our first Talking Tech episode back. I really appreciate your insights into the market, and I just wanted to say 2 things. One is, you know, the view we're taking with Talking Tech moving forwards is hopefully going to be a little bit more inclusive, try and get clients involved, candidates involved, more, you know, for a recruitment angle from the likes of you guys to be able to contribute to our audience. And actually what we're going to do is we'll let people know who's up on our next episode after the close of each one. And next up is Adam Gill, who's Global Head of Engineering and Product at Tombola. And I know they've got a lot of hiring to talk about and a lot of technology issues they're going to be facing, which hopefully we can help them with throughout this year. And what we'd like to do when we are engaging with our audience is any subjects or any questions they've got, we'd love you guys to ask us any questions get involved in the topics. It makes it more interesting. But hopefully we will get to see you all on our next episode of Talking Tech. And once again, thanks, Nick, and thanks, Rosie, for joining us on our first episode back. Really appreciate it.
No worries. Thank you.